Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like.
That's not going to happen. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian.
Good morning, everyone.
For the second day in a row, Ontario Premier Doug Ford reiterated his threat to cut off energy supply to the U.S. in retaliation to Donald Trump's proposed.
Something truly unexpected has just happened in the world energy market, and it's sending shockwaves through the United States. Europe and Canada have made a bold move, one that could cripple U.S. gas exports and reshape global trade in ways no one saw coming. For years, the U.S. has been a dominant supplier of liquefied natural gas, LNG, to Europe, especially after the energy crisis that followed tensions with Russia. But now, Europe and Canada have just struck a deal that could sideline American gas exporters, and the fallout is already beginning, and just when you thought the U.S. had the upper hand.
Facing at the time. Chrystia Freeland's going to put a list together. We're going to put our list together, and I'm sure the other provinces will as well. But we will go to the full extent, depending how far this goes. We will go to the extent of cutting off their energy, going down to Michigan, going down to New York State, and over to Wisconsin. I don't want this to happen, but my number one job is to protect Ontario, Ontarians and Canadians as a whole, since we're the largest province. Yeah. On the gear, they're going to enhance gear, get more border patrol, more sniffer dogs, if you want to call them that, patrol dogs.
Tariffs.
You come and attack Ontario, you attack livelihoods of people of Ontario and Canadians. We're going to use every tool in our toolbox to defend Ontarians and
President Trump's administration is still adamant that tariffs will generate revenue and bolster American employment by imposing reciprocal taxes on imported goods. However, this decision has raised concerns about potential economic challenges and increased inflation. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum remains optimistic about reaching an agreement, while French President Emmanuel Macron has urged for cooperation to prevent a trade war.
European leaders are quickly scrambling to hold a meeting of their own on the war in Ukraine, and it was French President Emmanuel Macron who called for this emergency meeting, which will be taking place at Paris's Élysée Palace this afternoon. He's going to meet with the leaders of Germany, Britain, Italy, Poland, Spain, the Netherlands, Denmark, as well as the NATO Secretary General and the European Council President and the European Commission President. They're going to tackle how to respond to the fast-moving pace of the Trump administration, something that came as a shock to many of these European leaders. Washington's shifting priorities, efforts to bolster defense spending, and
The tariffs are scheduled to commence in April, aligning with President Trump's broader efforts to address issues such as illegal immigration and drug smuggling. Nonetheless, there are growing fears that retaliatory measures from Canada, Mexico, and European nations could impede economic growth, with studies suggesting a potential annual decrease in U.S. incomes by approximately $1,200 due to these tariffs.
And other provinces seem unwilling to withhold their energy from U.S. markets.
From the Alberta perspective, under no circumstances will Alberta agree to cut off oil and gas exports.
By the way, I won't threat Donald not to.
Everything is happening fast, and it's putting billions of dollars in American energy investments at risk. Canada, once seen as a secondary player in the LNG market, is now positioning itself as Europe's new go-to energy supplier. This new alliance is more than a trade war. It's about power, strategy, and a reshuffling of global influence. And you'll never believe who stands to lose the most.
The largest province. Yeah. On the gear, they're going to enhance gear, get more border patrol, more sniffer dogs, if you want to call them that, patrol dogs. They're going to make sure they have more drones and more opportunities to cover the border. They have asked us, and I have agreed that we will support them, again, temporarily, as long as it takes to get through this. But again, we emphasize the border is not our responsibility. Well, I think he's being a little more aggressive than he was in the past. And I say this respectfully to the president. He's a different type of cat, to say the least. Maybe I'm a different type of...
For years, Europe relied heavily on Russian gas pipelines, with U.S. LNG playing a key backup role. But when geopolitical tensions with Russia exploded, Europe had to scramble for new energy sources, turning to the U.S. as a major supplier. At first, this looked like a huge win for American energy companies, who saw a surge in profits as Europe sought alternatives.
Let's make no mistake about it. As I mentioned to the Prime Minister, the rest of the premiers, we need to be ready. We need to be ready to fight. This fight is coming 100% on January the 20th or January 21st. We don't know what extent this fight's going to go to, but we need to line up everything that we're going to tariff and make sure that the tariff, the money that's coming from these tariffs, don't go into a federal bank account sitting there somewhere. It needs to be immediately distributed right across the province.
But here's where things take a shocking turn. Europe isn't content with simply replacing one dependency with another. While U.S. companies enjoyed record profits, European leaders began looking for ways to diversify their energy supply, ensuring they would never again be held hostage by a single nation. That's when Canada entered the picture with a game-changing offer. And the craziest part is that it's 100% real.
Operation and taking the interests of allies seriously. Donald Trump has completely rejected that idea. He's never believed in it. He doesn't believe in collective security. He believes in domination and being dominated. And he wants the United States to dominate because that's the only relationship he can understand. If you're not dominating, you're being dominated. One of the reasons he identifies so much with America's dictatorial enemies is because they do politics in a way that he understands. Putin isn't the servant of the Russian people. He's the boss of the Russian people. And Donald Trump doesn't like being the servant of the American people. He wants to be the boss of the American people and through them of everybody else.
What sort of scenarios do you think Canadians should be bracing for?
Canadians should be braced for a lot of tariff aggression. Although a tariff is a tax.
Canada has been quietly building its LNG infrastructure, and now the timing couldn't be better. With the completion of major LNG projects, Canada is suddenly in a position to export massive amounts of natural gas to Europe at prices that are even more competitive than U.S. gas. And if you think that's bad news for U.S. exporters, just wait. Canada's geographic advantage gives it direct access to both European and Asian markets, allowing it to ship LNG across the Atlantic and Pacific at lower costs. This means European nations can cut deals with Canada that offer more flexibility and fewer political risks than depending on the U.S. And here's the kicker: Europe is jumping at the opportunity.
Well, a lot of people say there's a big difference between your country and China, and that they're kind of lumped in the same tariff bucket. What do you think?
Well, I think it's unfortunate considering Canada does $1.3 trillion of trade, more than China, Japan, UK, and France combined. Ontario alone does $500 billion of two-way trade. And I might add, it's equally split down the center. And we're a big auto province here, and it's parts can go back and forth across the border up to 8 times. So the supply chain is very...
This shift is not going unnoticed in Washington. The U.S. energy sector has been pouring billions into expanding its LNG export capacity, expecting continued demand from Europe. Now, with Canada stepping in, those investments could turn into stranded assets. And here's why you should care. If U.S. gas exports decline, domestic prices could rise, hitting American consumers and businesses hard. Less export revenue means less economic growth, and some energy companies could even be forced to shut down operations. But what happens next will change everything.
For people's views on this subject and the individual personalities, the president-elect says that tariffs are the sweetest word to him. They're very effective. They can be used as a cudgel to get what you want out of those who you feel are taking advantage of you. But you can also go too far with these things, and other countries reciprocate with tariffs of their own, and it builds on itself. Do you think that this could really explode into a global recession if it gets out of hand?
Well, I hope not, Neil, because you can't compare Canada with any other country in the entire world when it comes to the U.S. We're part of the family, per se. We're the #1 trading partner, Ontario.
This isn't just about gas. Europe's move to diversify its energy supply is part of a larger strategy to become less dependent on any single power. The European Union has been aggressively pushing for energy security, investing heavily in renewables, while also securing stable LNG sources. And the reason why will shock you. Europe's new trade deals aren't just about cost, they're about political stability. Many European leaders see U.S. energy policy as unpredictable, especially after witnessing past supply disruptions and shifting trade policies. By signing long-term agreements with Canada, Europe is ensuring more control over its own energy future, especially after leader of Canadian Conservative Party Pierre Poilievre thinks it's a ripoff.
The concern he's raising really is that Canada is selling oil and gas at a massive price discount to American refineries and LNG plants that are able to massively profit at our expense. It is a ripoff. We're ripping ourselves off with this approach. Because of fanatical and stupid environmental extremists in the Liberal government and throughout the country, we are forced to sell almost all of our energy exports to the Americans. So the answer to that is to stop being stupid and start building LNG plants, pipelines, refineries, upgraders, and other energy infrastructure so that we can sell our energy to the world without going through.
And that's just scratching the surface. But if you think the U.S. is going to sit back and watch its dominance slip away, you have another thing coming. American energy giants have spent years positioning themselves as Europe's primary LNG supplier, and they're not about to lose that spot without a fight. And here's where things take a serious turn.
The Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister appeared insulted that Canada's closest ally would take this kind of action.
Let me be clear. These tariffs are totally unacceptable.
Justin Trudeau lashed out at the American suggestion that any Canadian product could pose a threat to U.S. national security.
Canadians have served alongside Americans in 2 world wars and in Korea. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of Afghanistan.
Chrystia Freeland announced Canada's $16 billion retaliation plan, dollar-for-dollar tariffs on American steel and aluminum, and more.
This is the strongest trade action Canada has taken.
Washington is already exploring trade measures to counter Canada's growing influence in the LNG market. Some experts predict that the U.S. may impose tariffs or other restrictions on Canadian gas imports to keep American LNG competitive. But if that happens, things could spiral out of control very fast. This isn't just about Europe and Canada. The entire global energy market is being reshaped. If the U.S. starts imposing tariffs on Canadian LNG, it could trigger retaliatory measures from Canada and other nations. And you won't believe who else is watching closely.
As President Trump stated yesterday, he is still committed to placing tariffs on Canada starting as early as tomorrow, possibly. Now, we don't know precisely what that could look like, but I do know 2 things. First, if the president does choose to implement any tariffs against Canada, we're ready with a response. A purposeful, forceful, but reasonable, immediate response. That if tariffs are implemented against Canada, we will respond. We won't relent until tariffs are removed, and of course, everything is on the table.
China and other Asian markets are also eyeing Canadian LNG as an alternative to U.S. gas. If they start signing deals with Canada as well, the U.S. could find itself losing market share not just in Europe, but worldwide. And the craziest part? This is happening right now. With Canada stepping up and Europe shifting gears, the global energy map is being redrawn. The U.S. may still have the upper hand in production capacity, but if more nations start looking to Canada as a safer, more reliable supplier, that dominance could slip away. And if you stay until the end, I'll show you why this is about to change everything.
Preserve peace on their territory and in their neighborhood. Second, I want us, for our citizens, to be in a situation to be independent in terms of technology, defense, energy. I would say the key structures of normal life. Why? Because nobody knows what could happen in the rest of the world. And if you are dependent on one country, you can be put in a very tricky situation the day you have a leadership in this country which decides to completely flip-flop. And it did happen, guess what? And I experienced that. So I don't want to be put in such a situation again. So I think it's fair as a European.
Governments, corporations, and investors are all making moves behind the scenes. The decisions being made right now will determine the balance of power in global energy for decades to come. And the biggest twist is if Canada successfully secures its position as Europe's top LNG supplier, the U.S. could lose billions in revenue every year. The U.S. is now at a crossroads. Either it fights back with aggressive trade policies to protect its LNG industry, or it risks losing its dominance in one of the most lucrative global markets.
That would allow us the independence and the sovereignty that we need to support our economy free from these threats. But I would remind our American friends that they benefit from our affordable, reliable energy, and the alternative is Venezuela, Iran, and other foreign dictatorships. Why would we not want to have a North American energy market that enriches us?
So what do you think? Is Canada on its way to becoming the next energy superpower, or will the U.S. find a way to reclaim its spot? Could this be the moment that transforms global energy for the next century? Kindly let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any updates from us.